When Ilia was killed at Tsitsamuri, a great epoch ended then. In this way, outstanding Georgian poet Tbilisi assessed the death of Ilia Chavchavadze, and he responded not only the fact of the gruesome murder of Ilia, but also its significance for Georgia, for the epoch in which he lived, and for the forthcoming epoch as well. Ilia Chavchavadze, it may be said, came storming into the Georgian public and literary arena in the 1860s. His article, A Couple of Words about the Translation of Kozlov's The Mad Girl by Chavchavadze Rustaveli, became an universal phenomenon from the outset. The article attracted great attention. Of course, we are all well aware of its content, but it would be naive to think that the main address of Ilia Chavchavadze's publication was the middle-grade Russian author Kozlov, or the translator of his text into the Georgian language. Not at all. This article was aimed to arouse the Georgian society, absolutely disoriented and adroitly under the yoke of the Russian Empire, to oppose the conservative path which Georgia, in Ilia Chavchavadze's opinion, was following at that time. In the period when the age of Romanticism was already overcome in Europe and critical realism was at the summit of its development, was it proper time for Kozlov and his text. The wheel of history could not have been turned back. Ilia Chavchavadze chose an aggressive publicistic tone to render his message. And not only this, on his return from St. Petersburg, he brought with him the manuscript of poems by Nicholas Baratashvili, the Georgian romantic poet of genius, who was handed over to him and placed in his custody by Queen of Samegrelo, Ekaterina Chavchavadze. The return of Nicholas Baratashvili's poems to the Georgian readers, publication of his works, the revival of his name was one more step indicating that Georgia should have followed the path of progress, the path shown to the country exactly by Nicholas Baratashvili. The unity of faith will bring no good for the state if the character of people differs. These words belong to Nicholas Baratashvili, to outstanding Georgian romantic poet who died very young and was directly exactly against the co-religionist Russia, which used quite dexterously the unity of faith for political purposes in order to disorient completely the Georgian society and to turn Georgia into its province. Ilia Chavchavadze remained a supporter of Baratashvili to the end of his life, which means that the path of his activity and life was fully directed at the revival of the Georgian national consciousness, independence, national identity, all those values which were so significant for Georgia in the 19th century. To declare his position, his opinions, his own firm decisions, Ilia Chavchavadze chose exactly the path of critical realism. It may be said that Ilia is the founder and introducer of this Western literary school and trend into Georgian literature and culture. Critical realism indeed proved a very good literary model for a writer to express his civic positions. Why? Because precisely in the period of critical realism, literature became a platform of voicing political, national, social, and ethical problems. Exactly in the period of critical realism, an author was no longer a passive observer, but an active participant of his his text, a bearer of an active position who always and constantly tried to direct his messages to the reader very accurately. Accordingly, the reader no longer remained an observer, but he was turned into a part of this text too. Naturally, critical realism, proceeding exactly from this situation, from its literary purpose, was an excellent means for Ilia Chavchavadze to express aloud his main views. The school of critical realism, which, as was noted above, was established in Georgia by the efforts of Ilia, was very soon enriched with significant names of authors like Ratiani, Alexandre Kazbegi, Chavchavadze, and others. These are the authors who, together with Ilia Chavchavadze, created the critical realism in Georgia. One of the main methods of critical realism as a literary model was that an author should have approximated to life as much as possible. Realist authors looked, as it were, with wide open eyes at life and tried to draw the struggle of values from there. The struggle of values of all kinds is the main marker and characteristic of critical realism. It is noteworthy that Georgian realist authors, on the initiative of Ilia Chavchavadze, were quite well and profoundly familiar with the already existing achievements of the Western and the Russian models of critical realism, and accordingly they voiced those topics which were covered by critical realism in the world. These topics were problems of political character, above all, the complicated relationship of a human being and the society, certain and quite serious social, ethical, psychological problems, and so on. Everything which could reflect the relation of a human being with the context, with the environment, society, and from where the reader could draw main conclusions. But in addition to all the above mentioned, Georgian critical realism will contain one more specific model, which will be offered to it exactly by Ilia Chavchavadze. This is the model of national idea of searching for the political identity of Georgia, its political independence, national identity and revival, which in Ilia Chavchavadze's view was the main problem in Georgia and which he turned into the leitmotif of his literature, prose, poetry, social and political journalism. Forever and everywhere, Georgia, I am with you. These words belong to Ilia. He will say and he will remain faithful to these words during his lifetime until in 97 when he will be killed at Tsitsamuri. If for Western critical realism the main idea remained the impossibility to attain human happiness in the society based on the primacy of money, whereas for Russian realism the main topic was the global incompatibility of a human being with the environment, for Georgian critical realism the national issue became the main issue, and this was the great merit of Ilia Chavchavadze. The brilliant texts of Georgian critical realism are focused exactly on this topic. We can name here Ilia Chavchavadze's Letters of a Traveler, also Akaki Tsereteli's Tornik Eristavi, and of course Vazhabshawela's Bachtrioni. We should recall Alexander Kazbegi's short stories as well, and El Guja among them. We belong to ourselves. Ilia Chavchavadze will declare this in the Letters of a Traveler, and with these words he in fact will declare a new political, national and cultural standard for Georgia. The national issue is so important for Ilia Chavchavadze that even the social topics are again adapted to the national idea. And it should be noted that it is not a quite frequent phenomenon in the history of Western critical realism. We mean the following. His renowned text, Katsia Adamiani, is that a man, the main character of which is Rustaveli, a Georgian nobleman, lazy, devoid of ideas and demotivated, who, as it were, does no harm to anyone, is not malicious, but it's absolutely clear that the author does not support him. Why? In our view, there is only one answer. Persons like Rustaveli will never be able to lead Georgia to freedom. They will never lead Georgia to that political independence which is so crucial for Ilia Chavchavadze. Georgia needs persons of a different type. Active, burning with love for their homeland, persons who are capable of developing and taking decisions. Ilia Chavchavadze will unfold his literary positions, his civic positions, quite widely in his publicistic activity as well. His publicistic articles, well known and acknowledged, such as Quatagagadi Outcrying Stones or Sakartvelos Moambezed and many others, they will win the hearts of Georgian readers in 19th century, and it may be said that they continue to gain the hearts of the Georgian reader to the present day, because exactly in these publicistic articles, Ilia appears as a person who is not only entrusted with the fate of Georgian literature of 19th century, but is also entrusted with the future of Georgian statehood, the future of Georgian culture. He is a man who is building the economy of Georgia, the education of Georgia. He is establishing the society for the spreading of literacy among Georgians. He is managing the first bank in Georgia and is discussing various issues which are significant for our country. Thus, in these articles, we can see Ilia as a multi-faced, multispectral man who is spending his energy on activities of numerous directions for the sake of his country. Ilia Chavchavadze is a person who is carrying the 19th century in the Georgian history on his shoulders. The blood shed at Tsitsamuri repeatedly reminds us, the Georgians, of our own mission and repeatedly makes us realize what the significance of a great personality is in history and what kind of care he needs. Naturally, it is a great acknowledgement that at present Ilia Chavchavadze is canonized among the Georgian saints and is Ilia the righteous.
და ის მიუერთდა ქართველ წმინდანთა რიგს.